If you just bought a new home, these 5 mistakes could cost you thousands or even put your family at risk. Stick with me because new homeowners miss these every single day.
Welcome to Ultimate DIY, where you learn to be your own handyman. And today we're going to talk about 5 things that every new homeowner should do when they move into a home. The very first thing is going to be securing your home. All the locks in your home, whether that's at a storage building, whether it's a gate entryway, whether it's a garage, a storage compartment on the side of the house, front door, back door, or even a door like this. This is the back door to my home, and it requires a special lock. I have a deadbolt holding it right now, but this is a one-piece handle, fairly expensive. But most things when it comes to rekeying or relocking can be really cheap. You know, you can actually rekey a lot of them. This is rekeyable, or you can go buy a new deadbolt and install it. Make sure that you're matching the door handle and the door knob. And remember, if you get rekeyable ones, you can actually rekey the front to the back to side garage door entries so that it makes it where it works really well, and you have one set of keys. That really helps quite a bit. Do not forget about your mailbox. If you have a lockable mailbox, do not forget about reprogramming your garage door. A lot of people don't think about that, but people end up with the codes or remotes and could open your garage door. We don't know who possibly has keys to your home. It could be previous owners, it could be previous construction workers or maintenance men, handymen. There's a lot of people that could have keys to those homes. So that should be your number one thing to fix. So let's go ahead and take a look at number 2.
So number 2 is simply going to be knowing how to shut off the water. If you have a major pipe break, something goes wrong, your toilet overflows, you need to know how to shut the water off. The first line of defense is always going to be at the fixture. Now make sure that these are actually working. This one is a quarter turn. You just simply quarter turn and it is off. A lot of your shutoffs are going to be multi-turn and they wear out. If you have the option, you should replace those. And I have videos showing how to actually replace those. You can do those without even having to know how to sweat pipe. You do a flare fitting and it makes it extremely easy. Now, once you shut it off, you can test. You will have enough water in here for one flush, and then you should have nothing left. I've already flushed once. We have nothing. So it is dry. We know that that one is actually working. Let's go ahead and look under a sink real quick. Now, sink shutoffs are going to be very much the same. You're going to have all of your stuff under the sink. They'll usually blocking you, so you need to know where they are. And they're going to be up here, and these are simply quarter turns as well. Every homeowner should be able to shut their water off. So if you don't have the certain tools to do that, your whole house could flood in a matter of seconds if you have a pipe rupture. The number one tool you're going to need is a water shutoff. It's going to look something like this with a U-shaped end on it. You can get this at any department store. You can get it on Amazon. I'll leave some links for this so that you can pick it up if you need to. You can also use one like this that has the same end on it, and this has a key, and the key works really well in a lot of units to be able to slide in, turn, and lift. This particular one does not work with the key. So I see a lot of guys using a screwdriver, and they fight with this to get it off and move it out of the way. Now this one is going to open pretty easily because I just had it off. But there is a trick that my grandfather taught me when I was young, and it's get an open end just like this, and you have the opening right here. You're going to simply put this in that hole, turn it, and lift. And now I can move this around without any problem. It is a great little trick to know if you're struggling to get that off, especially if it's been setting a long time, there's dirt and mud around it, and it does not want to come loose. You are going to struggle with a screwdriver trying to get that out. And in a lot of cases, your keys, if you may not even have a key, is not going to turn and get it out. Now, the key a lot of times works because there is a lock behind here in some units, and it will unlock that lock. Obviously, this system does not have that lock. Now, And this will work on most units, but it doesn't work on all. Most of the time, you just need something like this tool and a way to get the lid open if you do not require the key. So next on my list is going to be smoke detectors, one of the most important items that you have in your home. It is going to help protect you and your family's safety. It's going to detect if there's a fire, it detects smoke, and it's going to let you know so that you can call the authorities and get out of the home. Now, where do you find them? When you walk into your home, you're going to look near the bedrooms, usually up on the ceiling, and you'll spot, usually they are round, and they'll have a button just like this on the front. You're going to want to get a ladder, get up there and push that button. You're going to want to hold it until it starts beeping, and it's usually going to beep for anywhere from 60 to 90 seconds, and then it's going to go off. But that's going to tell you that it is functioning and it is working. If it does not work, then you need to replace it, or in some cases, you need to replace the battery. Some of these are going to be battery operated. Some of them are hardwired in and they have a battery backup. Some of them, like this one, actually plugs into the wall and has a battery backup. You're going to find some older models out there that do not have the battery backup that are hardwired in. But most modern building codes today are requiring that battery backup in case you lose power. You know, they want to make sure that you were alarmed and you were able to get out. Now, what is the difference in a CO, carbon dioxide detector, and a smoke detector? Carbon dioxide is put off with anything that actually uses a flame in your home and burns a fuel. That's going to be your hot water heater, a gas range. It's going to be a gas HVAC system. It's going to be fireplace. Any of those type things that are in your home, you are going to need a CO detector as well, so that it can alert you, because it's going to actually detect that colorless, odorless gas that you wouldn't be able to detect. Now, you can get these units in one unit, by itself. In other words, being a CO detector by itself or a smoke detector by itself, or you can get combination units. And as far as the batteries go, guys, you can get them where you replace it with a 9-volt battery, which is what this one takes, or they can have internal lithium type batteries that will last up to 10 years, so you don't ever have to deal with it. If you've ever been in a home that it starts beeping, it can be very annoying. And don't be that person that gets up there and pulls that battery out and just leaves it out and doesn't use their smoke detector anymore. Not smart. So be sure you don't do that. If you have a problem, replace the battery or replace the unit. So there you go, guys. That's your smoke detectors in a nutshell. So let's go ahead and let's look at the next one on the list. So number 4 on our list is your air conditioning system. It's better known as your HVAC system by the pros. But you're a homeowner. What are you going to do to keep your system running really well and top notch? It's a lot like a car. Every 3,000 to 5,000 miles, you're changing your oil and your filter. You need to do the same thing with your air conditioning system, minus the oil. All you need to worry about is the filter. Now, filters are going to come in a lot of different configurations. This one is going to be a 20 by 25 by 4. I've seen these bigger, larger as far as the outer diameter, and then the thickness, all the way up to 6 inches. That is all going to determine how often you have to change these. They'll claim some of these are 1-year filters, 6-month filters, but a lot of that is going to be determined by you. If your house is dusty, it's under construction, if you have a lot of animals in the house, there's a lot of hair floating around that's going to clog that with those animals. You need to take all of that into consideration. When you first move into a house, you should always change the filter right away. Then put a reminder on your phone for every 30 days. Check the filter. So when you get to the point and you check it and it finally needs to be replaced, mark that time span down, and that's the time span you need to set on your reminder going forward, and you should be good to go. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind with filters. You're going to have MERV ratings. This is a MERV 8, but they can go up, 15, 16. I wouldn't go much higher than a 15, 16 MERV rating because it makes your unit have to work harder. Another thing to note, if you go out to your outside unit, your condenser, and it is frozen over, it is going to be frozen generally for one of two reasons.
You've got a leak and your refrigerant has gotten low. That's, number one. But the easiest thing for you to do is check your filter before you call an HVAC guy out to look at it. Save yourself that money, because 9 times out of 10, the filter is totally clogged and the unit is not operating correctly. It throws everything out of whack. The outside unit will freeze. Number two that you need to know about filters: if you have filter bays on your returns, in your home, which I do, you want to make sure that you do not have a filter here at the unit and filters there. That is too many filters, and it's going to make the system overwork, and you're going to have the same kind of problems as a clogged filter. So either have filters down at your return vents or have filters here. And to be honest, the filter here is going to be the best place to actually put your filter. So how do we replace the filters? All you're going to do is unwrap this filter. It has arrows that give you a direction. See this arrow? That means that my air is flowing into this box, which is called a plenum, and going into my unit. I need to make sure that arrow is facing into the unit, not the other direction. Okay, number one. Now, your unit can have a cover like this that just slips right off, and you can set it aside. Some of them are going to have little like nuts on them that you're going to have to untwist and pull them off. And by the way, this unit, mine is up in an attic, obviously, but yours could be in a closet somewhere. So you need to locate where your inside furnace or air handler unit is at. And you just simply are going to pull this out. Now, this one just got replaced not too long ago, and you can see it is pretty clear. It's not bad. I do have an older one here to kind of show you the difference of one that is a little older. This was the one I replaced right here, and you can see how much more dirty that actually is. Now, if it gets really bad, these will start, crunching up and concaving, and it will not allow any air to go through. That's what causes your problems. All right, guys, so that's your basics on air filters. Guys, one other quick bonus tip I'm going to throw in that can actually help you and save you in the future and make things really quick if you do have a repair situation. I literally take and write down all of my serial numbers and model numbers to my units on top of the unit itself. I even put the install date so I know exactly how old my unit is, so I don't have to rely on an air conditioning specialist to come out and tell me my unit needs to be replaced because it's 12 years old, when I can look at it and see that it is actually 7 years old. So this could save you a lot of money in the future. And if you have to pick up a part, you already know where your serial numbers are. You don't have to go in here and take this whole lid off, look in there, and try to find those numbers again. You already have it. You're ready to rock and roll. So let's get back to the program. So number 5 on my list of things that a new homeowner should do when they move into a home is going to be build a basic toolkit. Now, this toolkit doesn't have to be real elaborate. It can be as simple as something like this here. It comes in a little pouch, and it has all of your basics. It has a little claw hammer, a level, small screwdrivers, has a Phillips and a flat edge screwdriver. It is going to have the adjustable wrench, which you will use on plumbing fixtures. It has regular needle nose pliers. It'll have regular pliers. It'll have a cutting knife, and it even has a 16-foot tape measure. This would be adequate to get you started. You can hang pictures in the house. You can fix, like I said, small plumbing leaks. You can do most minor repairs with this. You can change out the locks on your doors, which was our number 1. Pretty much anything with that. Now, as you get going, you're going to want to add to your tool arsenal. I would suggest getting better hammers. This is a framing hammer. This is going to be a trim hammer, which is great for putting up things like pictures behind me on this empty wall, because it has a smooth face. It's lightweight, has a hooked claw. Smooth face means that the very front, there's no waffle. A framing hammer is waffled on the front. Use this to build the wall that this sheetrock is on. This one I'm going to use to hang those pictures. I would get probably a little better tape measure, at least a 25 footer. 30 is great if you're measuring whole rooms, because if you're going to start doing DIY projects and trying to put down floors and things like that, you need something bigger than a 16-foot tape measure. You need minimum 25. I would go larger if you can, maybe have both. Something else you're going to want is a really good drill. Now, you can buy electric drills, but pick a platform that you really like. This is Milwaukee. I like Milwaukee. Obviously, I love DeWalt as well. I have both platforms. But the thing to keep in mind is once you pick one platform, they are going to have a multitude of tools that the batteries are going to work on. So pick a platform that you really like. So we have the drill. I have an impact. The impact is going to be more for driving bolts and screws and things like that. And obviously this is going to be made more for drilling out holes and things like that. Also, if you pick a good platform, you could generally get a nice emergency light that's going to work off the big battery. They're heavy duty. You can drag these down into basements and into crawl spaces and up into attics. You can have it next to your bed. If the power goes out, you have an adjustable light that is going to last a very long time. And if you have multiple batteries, you don't have to worry about running out of power. Now, if you do not have a system like this, I would suggest getting a really good flashlight and keep that near your bed at all times in case you have a power outage, you have a light. So there you go. That is my top 5 things that any new homeowner should do the second they get their new home. So in the next top 5 episode, I'm going to cover the top 5 emergency shutoffs that every homeowner should know. So if you're not a subscriber, please hit that little subscribe button, ring that little bell notification, hit it twice so that you get the notifications of all my upcoming videos as I release them. And leave me a comment if I've left something off or if you like the video, let me know. I appreciate it. I love reading them and it helps the other viewers as well. We will see you guys on the next one.